RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is a one-topic episode of Iron Debate brought to you by Yamamoto Nutrition. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. We are joined by IFBB Pro Fouad Abiad, who was in the 2017 Arnold Classic in Columbus, Ohio. We're joined by Louis Uridel and, of course, the man they call the technician, Chris Aceto, and joining us from Cape Coral, Florida, the man with the final word on all topics, Dave Palumbo. So we're going to make this episode about a quote from one of the true legends of the sport of bodybuilding. And we're going to give them credit where credit is due. So Lee Haney, speaking to Muscular Development, had some comments about Cedric McMillan when asked if he could ever see Cedric challenging for the Olympia crown, for Phil Heath's Olympia crown. He says, quote, well, he first referred to the fact that he was blessed with the perfect genetic blueprint, but said that he would not win the Olympia. Then he goes on to say that if Cedric had what we called in the old days, the eye of the tiger along with that physique, he'd be unstoppable. Does he have the eye of the tiger to go with that physique? It has taken him too long to get to where he has got. The eye of the tiger would have hit him a long time ago. He did finish on a positive, saying that when he first saw Cedric's physique, that it, quote, brought tears to my eyes. I was like, what in the world? What a breath of fresh air. So here's what we take from that. And Fouad, we're going to go to you first on this one. In Lee Haney's opinion, 8-time Mr. Olympia's opinion, Cedric will not win the Olympia title from Phil Heath, and says that he does not possess the quote-unquote eye of the tiger. What say you?
I'm not going to go ahead and say whether he's going to beat Phil or not beat Phil. I think he can beat Phil. I think he has the tools to beat Phil. Whether he does it or not, I don't know. But going back to Lee's comments about, how hard he works with the eye of the tiger and all that, I mean, he doesn't know him personally. He doesn't hang out with him on a day-to-day basis. He doesn't train with him. So what basis is that coming from? Like, where is he getting that information? By what gauge is he making that by? You know what I mean? I worked with Cedric at SciTech. We would travel a lot. Cedric's the one guy who would stand at a booth when all the other bodybuilders were like, okay, it's time to go eat. Cedric's line would be however many people long, and he's like, I can't go. And he would literally stand there until the line would either die down or somebody would grab him and pull them away. The guy is a soldier who also turned pro as a soldier. And I've seen him train, and it's like, you know what? All these bullshit comments about Cedric doesn't train hard enough or all this. I mean, there's no basis for it. Anybody who's been around him knows he's, he works hard. You don't get to where he's gotten by not working hard. So I just think it's a bullshit comment. I don't know what the eye of the tiger is. The guy just won the Arnold Classic.
No, it's funny because that's exactly where this conversation ushered from, where he wins the Arnold Classic, and of course, Dave was interviewing him afterwards, and the topic came up. Can he beat Phil Heath? So, Louis, let's go to you on this one. Again, Lee Haney, 8-time Mr. Olympia, does not think he will beat Phil Heath. Further goes on to say that he doesn't think he possesses the eye of the tiger. Where do you stand on that comment?
Well, clearly this is from a fan's standpoint, as if I'm not an IFBB pro and I've never been on the Olympia stage. But, I mean, I think to get to that level, you have to have a certain something. You have to have that je ne sais quoi. You have to be able to push hard and get there. I don't think you win an Arnold Classic by not having, the guts or fortitude to get there. And, this statement on Phil Heath, I don't know. I don't know if anyone's going to beat Phil Heath. I don't know if that's really going out on a limb making that statement, because the guy's been pretty much dominating. So, I mean, it's Lee Haney. He's an 8-time. How many times he won the Olympia? I mean, he has the right to say what he wants to say. He's got his opinion. He's earned that right. So if that's his take, he can say it. But kind of like what Fouad said, I mean, I don't know Cedric that well. I would never make that statement because I don't work out in the same gym with him. So I don't know.
Just reflects how opinionated the sport is. I mean, again, just 2 years ago when Cedric finished 4th at the Arnold Classic, Arnold Schwarzenegger coming out and saying that he was quote-unquote pissed because, again, he is a fan of Cedric's physique. He wins this year. He goes up to him, presents a trophy, and says, finally. And then you hear this out of the mouth of the 8-time Mr. Olympia, Lee Haney. Chris Aceto, let's go to you on this one. Where do you stand?
He should shut his trap, really. Really? I mean, You know, hi, I just won the Arnold Classic. You don't have the eye of the tiger. You know, if you watch Branch Warren's videos, which I've watched and and they're enjoyable, and he's whacking iron around and bouncing 400 pounds off his chest like it's a bouncing ball, or even Guy Sistanino wears T-shirts that say "I'm going to war." Cedric's been to war. You know, so to question someone's legitimacy in having testicles to be able to work hard and have, quote, the eye of the tiger based on nothing is insulting. You know, maybe he should be up there championing the fact that he did, like Fouad say, just win the Arnold Classic. Maybe Lee Haney should be advocating for him when, you know, I mean, Arnold did. We all were at the Arnold when Lee Haney when Cedric ended up fourth, shockingly. And, you know, Arnold said the next day, man, he should have won. That was Arnold's opinion. Where was Lee Haney in that? Where was Lee Haney when Cedric was bounced out of Brazil? I mean, talk about a travesty of justice, of just one of the most ridiculous black eyes on the IFBB in history, perpetrated by Lee Thompson with Sean Ray cheerleading. Where was he stepping up as a 8-time Mr. Olympia to say, man, out in public and say, man, maybe he should have been kicked out like he was. We hear like birds chirping like in Lewis's background from Lee Haney.
They don't agree either.
Listen, I've worked with Cedric when he's putting in, like Fouad said, 14-hour days in the military trying to prep for a 2013-2014 Arnold Classic, having SciTech fly him off on the weekend for 3 days, come back on a Monday to 14-hour days. Oh, man, you don't have it in you to do what you need to do, according to Lee Haney. You know, Lee Haney won the Nationals, and Joe Weider put a golden spoon in his mouth, right? He never worked. I don't remember him having a quote, job, other than being a professional bodybuilder. Cedric was juggling 4 kids, working in the military up until recently, full-time, traveling on the weekends for SciTech to support his family. And that's not an excuse. That means he's doing what he has to do to get the job done. And I'll say, win the Arnold this year. Last year, 2015, or the year before, what was it? He was fourth that year. Arnold, has the meltdown. 2014, he was third. People forget he was third. I helped Roden. He could have easily beaten Roden at that show. I thought he did. Wolf won that show. You know, once they compared Cedric next to Roden and Wolf, they're like, okay, percent prejudging. I mean, he looked pretty damn good. You can go back and look at pictures. He looks crazy. So 2013, I mean, he's had, the point is, you know, Lee Haney does not know about Cedric McMillan. And that's why I never, ever make believe that people who I work with train harder than other people, even if they beat them. It could be they have better genetics, could be that they have better coaching, could be that their body cooperated better. You know, aside from the Phil Heath thing, because Phil keeps dominating, you know, Phil's proven himself over and over. You know, I mean, that's not the issue that I have with Lee saying, can he beat Phil Heath? It's to question his inner manhood in, well, son, you just don't have it. Listen, I told Jay Cutler that he was going to win the Olympia in 1995 when he won the Nationals. He couldn't even win the overall. I said, Jay, you are going to win the Olympia. You just have to hang in there. Nobody questioned that it took him another 11 years to get the job done. That it wasn't until 2006 that he won it. People already forget. Oh yeah, he took him a long time. And just because he didn't squat 800, deadlift 800 like Coleman, and eat 9,000 grams of protein a day like Coleman, and do 5 hours of cardio like Coleman a day, doesn't mean that he wasn't putting in the work. So I think it's a disappointing review. And, I always make sure this, no matter how many times in fun and sometimes serious, when I'm talking like about Dexter Jackson, Dexter's always on my mind, Dexter and Sean Ray, because Dexter always beats people I work with. I never once questions. You know, Dexter don't really train hard because people do all the time, right? They say, oh, you can eat Kentucky Fried Chicken. Oh, Dexter just doesn't have to train to failure. Oh, Dexter doesn't have to do this. Oh, Dexter's got a great metabolism. Oh, Dexter went from a bantamweight to a super heavyweight. It's all genetics. Like he doesn't even work hard. And I think that's bullshit and insulting to Dexter Jackson.
Strong stuff from the technician. Dave, let's go to you on this one again. Lee Haney coming out and saying that he doesn't think that Cedric McMillan will beat Phil Heath, again saying that he doesn't feel like he has the eye of the tiger.
Well, I think one thing, I think Lee Haney didn't handle the question properly. I think what he meant to say that Cedric is not a bodybuilder in the conventional sense. I mean, let's face it, Cedric's very artistic. He's kind of aloof. He doesn't, you know, cohabitate and hang out with like bodybuilding people. He lives in a little shoebox in South Carolina down there. He does his own thing, you know, he disappears, you know, when the shows are over and you don't hear from him the whole year. So that doesn't mean that he's not working hard, obviously. You know, if anyone has the eye of the tiger, it's Cedric, because Cedric's he's not living in the lap of luxury in Vegas or Florida or LA. He's, you know, a simple guy with a simple family. You know, he likes to go out and, you know, hunt and you know, mow the grass. I mean, that if anything, he's living the real life of the real Spartan lifestyle. I mean, the guy made his own exercise equipment, for God's sake. So when he was in the military, he built, you know, machines out of wood. If you ever seen those machines, they're unbelievable looking. So Cedric has a passion for bodybuilding. I can sense that when I talk to him about it. He might not be, you know, the scientist or as like Milos, we call Milos the mind. In that sense, he might be a little bit more aloof in the way he follows, you know, procedures, you know, to get ready for shows, and he marches to his own drummer essentially, kind of like the way Kai Green does, you know. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't have every cell in his body that wants to win that Olympia. He's had a lot of bad luck, like Chris mentioned, getting disqualified from the Arnold in Brazil that time. He got the flu at the Olympia one year. He couldn't. He was in the hospital. He's had another bunch of mishaps. I can't even remember them all. There's so many of them. And he's lost contracts. I mean, just crazy crap has happened to this guy. And I think this year all the stars were in alignment finally. And you saw a great Cedric McMillan. Will we see that at the Olympia? I don't know. I think the only thing you can criticize about Cedric is maybe he's not as consistent as we'd like to see him. But it could be also the circumstances surrounding his life because it's so chaotic, you know. And I'd like to see, you know, I have one kid now. There's no way I could have ever competed with one kid. I don't know how he does it with 4 and still be a good father. So I think I think the statement was not, I hope it wasn't taken out of context by Muscular Development because I don't see Lee Haney as a very vindictive type of guy. You know, he could say, hey, I don't think Cedric's going to win the Olympia just because I don't think he has the physique to do it. But if he likes the guy's physique, I wouldn't question Cedric's passion or his dedication to the sport or his willingness to work to get what he wants.
You're watching a one-topic iron debate, the topic of Lee Haney's comments on Cedric McMillan. Fouad, I want to go back to you because, again, you are an IFBB pro bodybuilder in the quote-unquote today's era. And I almost look at these comments and I wonder, because I'm sure you get this a lot, I'm sure your generation of bodybuilders gets this a lot, where, again, we're going back to the 90s era, the quote-unquote 90s era versus today's bodybuilder. And the perceptions and misperceptions with that era thinking they had maybe more of an old school work ethic, and that today's bodybuilders perhaps don't, you know, have that same amount of grit or whatever you call it. That exists in all sports. When you go generation to generation, every generation thinks they did it better. They worked harder. Do you sense that this is just really a reflection of that, and it's something that you and your generation feel does exist today?
Yeah, I think you're going to get me started on a rant that I probably shouldn't go on because it's going to get me in trouble. But, you know, all I hear about is the guys in the 90s worked hard and the guys now are lazy as fuck. And I'm like, what am I doing over here? Like, am I not in the gym busting my ass? Like, are these guys not all in the gym busting their ass? Sean Roden, Cedric, well, Dexter is from the 90s, but, like, are these guys not all busting their ass. Like, I think one thing is we're judged a little differently than the guys in the 90s. They were a little smaller than we are. And Kevin Levrone even said it himself at the Olympia last year. The guys are much bigger now. Maybe that's the reason why we don't look the same. I don't know. But, yeah, I don't think it's a good thing when somebody of Lee Haney's stature or Sean Ray's stature, Dorian's stature, puts down the sport, puts down guys who are working just as hard. I mean, look at these guys. I mean, look at Guy Cisternino. Look at some of these people's Instagram. I mean, people are working hard. None of us are dogging it. You know what I mean? So for whatever reason you want to give, I mean, going back to Cedric, it's like I was actually gonna tell that story that Dave said. One of the first trips I went on with him, he showed me pictures of a bunch of machines he built in the desert. I mean, who's working that hard? Who's building machines out of wood? You know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous. So, yeah, I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think it's good when other people knock down the sport. It doesn't help anything. I mean, you're giving yourself a pat on the back. That's great. But you're not helping the sport as a whole when you're an 8-time Mr. Olympia winner and you're shooting down somebody who's trying to get ahead in the game. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't think it helps anybody and it burns my ass, man. I hear Sean Ray talking shit about nowadays bodybuilders. They're lazy and they're this and they're that. And I think he went on a rant on one YouTube video I saw about us. Not a lot of guys are doing the Arnolds and they're only competing once a year. Have you looked at Sean Ray's fucking record? Look at Sean Ray's record. He did one show a year, like his whole career. So who the hell is he to talk? You know what I mean? This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. It's like, just help us get ahead. Don't sit there and just shit on us all. Like, we're all working hard to get ahead. So anyway, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent, but.
Louis, let's go back to you again. You call yourself a fan, but you are very involved in the sport. You've covered the sport. You've been an analyst. You've interviewed many of these top athletes. Do you think Lee Haney's comments maybe is a reflection of that, quote unquote, the 90s versus today's bodybuilder mentality?
I'd hope not. I kind of lean what Dave was saying. You know, it was Muscular Development that put it out. So I don't know. Maybe they misquoted him or wrote it down the wrong way. But what Fouad said, yeah. I mean, if that's the case, I've seen some of the pros. I've actually worked out with a few pro bodybuilders, and I thought, yeah, these guys, you know, they're lazy, like not like the 90s guys. And I went through one workout, and I think I made it through the first exercise, and I had to tap out because I was getting ready to pass out and puke from a leg day. And I train hard, so it was quite eye-awakening how hard they actually push, because they may look like they're not pushing hard because they're just methodical, but the rest periods and everything like that, they're actually busting their butts. And I'd hate to say anyone that looks that good doesn't work for it. You know, it's just, I don't think it's even possible.
Chris, let's go to you again, because you've been on both sides of the spectrum and you've worked with athletes from both sides of the spectrum. What Lee Haney said, do you think that's sort of an extension of that, you know, again, us versus them, 90s versus today's bodybuilder, sort of what we saw on stage with, you know, The Gift versus Kevin Levrone, 90s versus today? Do you think that's an extension of that conversation?
I don't know if it's an extension. I don't really care. I just, you know, frame my comments over what I see were his comments. You know, so I don't know what the genesis is or the reason why he says those things or the reason why these people say these things. You know, and frankly, at the end of the day, we don't know how hard people train. You know, we don't know how hard people train, but you can't tell me like Phil Heath's genetics are that incredible. I mean, I make fun of his training because I got to make fun of something, right? Because there's not much to make fun of his physique. Unfortunately, not much to criticize there. So sometimes I'll take a pot shot at his training. But, I mean, you think he's really just doing like 10-pound, you know, side laterals and getting delts as big as my head? You know what I mean? I mean, he's got to be killing it in the gym at some point, you know, during the year. And, you know, nobody has that type of genetics just to be able to go into the gym, be lazy, and look crazy. You know, I mean, there's like this myth that's perpetuated by people that bodybuilders in this era are lazy. And that is not only not true, it's just lying. And it's an insult to people, you know, who are on top. I mean, you know, and that's perpetuated against Dexter too. You know, I don't know how many times I hear, well, Dexter don't train hard. I'm like, dude, define what hard is. You know, just because you're not going in there, you know, and using smelling salts and using the F word doesn't mean you're not training hard in the gym. You know, there's a lot of ways to generate intensity. And until you go into the gym with Dexter or Phil or Wolf or Roden or Cedric or Fouad, you don't know what you're talking about.
Dave, I'm going to go back to, go ahead, Fouad.
I just want to add to that real quickly.
Yeah.
Anybody can, well, not anybody, but there's a lot of people who could probably come into the gym and train with me and finish a workout, or train with somebody and finish a workout. But just to touch on Dexter, do that for 30 years. You know what I mean? Like, how can you say somebody doesn't work hard when he's been at the top for over 2 decades?
Listen, Fouad, you know what people say about very successful people all the time? That they don't look like they work hard. You know why? Because they make it look easy. Because they've been working so hard and they know how to do it and get the job done. For you, the layman, or for someone on the outside looking in, maybe they make it look easy.
Yeah.
Dave, I want to pose this to you in this manner. Again, we heard what Lee Haney had to say, but he also did say, you know, he praised upon his physique, saying that it was quote unquote refreshing and it brought tears to his eyes. Is this in a way Lee Haney basically saying, man, like I just wish in a weird way, it's tough love that he wants to see more out of Cedric and the physique that he possesses?
Yeah, you know what? I know Lee Haney. I've interviewed him before. I think Lee Haney is probably one of the most genuine individuals that I've ever met in the bodybuilding world. I think that he truly does think that Cedric has some tremendous gifts. I don't think that Lee Haney meant anything disrespectfully, even though it came out that way. And like I said, who knows the context in which it was written by Muscular Development. It might have, you know, painted it in a more negative light than it really needed to be. But I will pose this one question to everyone on the panel. If Lee Haney was facing Cedric McMillan, the one who just won the Arnold Classic, in the Olympia, Lee Haney at his best, Cedric in his Arnold Classic form, who wins? Chris?
Fouad?
You really did that to me. I think Lee Haney. I mean, it's tough because Lee. How much did Lee weigh? Like 240?
Yeah.
I think I would say. Are they both at 100% condition? Because if Cedric's in shape, Cedric wins.
Well, Cedric in his Arnold Classic shape. That's what I'm saying.
No, I think he'd need to be a little bit better to beat Lee Haney. Just my honest opinion.
Chris?
Lewis?
You know, I'd love to see that if that was possible. I'd love to see that on stage along with a million other matchups. But, you know, Lee Haney at his absolute best and Cedric McMillan at his absolute best. I think Cedric can do it at his absolute best. His best. He's
not answering the question.
Yeah. You can only judge Cedric on what we've seen of him.
Okay, Arnold and Lee Haney.
What?
Arnold Cedric.
Oh, the
Arnold Cedric.
Yeah.
I think
I'll just defer to Fouad because he's got a better eye than I do on something like that.
No, don't do that. Don't blame me. Now he blames me on see this shit.
It's all Fouad. I mean.
Dave, have we ever done a versus episode with Cedric and Lee Haney?
We might have to. I want to hear Chris's opinion.
I think that's about to happen.
I want to hear Chris's opinion.
That's what's going to be next on tap in our programming schedule. Chris, get a final thought from you on that question that Dave posed. Cedric at his 2017 Arnold Classic versus Lee Haney at his best.
Lee Haney, and let me add this. We've never heard a bad word out of Cedric's mouth. Have we, Fouad?
No.
The guy got his ass thrown out of Brazil. Did we hear one vendetta? We get a Facebook post from Lee Thompson saying, I'm best friends with, you know, Cedric McMillan, I have to have a meltdown and go on Facebook for the third time in my life and say, you were the one who kicked him out. Can you imagine? I mean, I just want to point out Cedric's character. In addition to his physique, he's never opened up and said one negative thing about a judgment, a bodybuilding show result, another competitor. I mean,
that doesn't mean he can win the Olympia, though. So that doesn't mean anything.
No, Dave, no. I'm juxtaposing it versus what Lee Haney said, because you asked me who would win. I said Lee Haney would beat him, and I wanted to point out Cedric's character, because character's easy to fake these days, right?
Right.
You can fake it. You can fake it, but eventually something's going to come. You know, it takes a career to build a reputation in 2 minutes or 2 sound bites to ruin it.
Right.
To ruin your reputation. So I'm using as a litmus test, you know, what Lee Haney said, and I'm asking Fouad or anyone here, have we ever heard a negative thing about Cedric? I mean, all bodybuilders, almost, other than road builders, I mean, some people don't even speak, but, you know, Phil said some things, maybe Jay's never said anything. Coleman has said some things, you know what I mean? Everyone said something. I don't think Fouad's ever said anything, but you know, people have said things that are like, you know, negative. Reflect on them.
Well, you know,
I have. You know, some
what?
of them are regret, some I don't. But Cedric don't say nothing.
Well, Chris, you know what you're saying? I think you might be answering the question. I think Lee Haney maybe thinks that Cedric is too nice a guy to win the Olympia. Sometimes you got to be a little more cutthroat, and I think that would change who Cedric McMillan is, and that's just not who he is. He's a very artistic, even though he kind of hides it a little bit, he's very emotionally, you know, attached and very empathetic to people and their cause. And he doesn't complain. He's not a complainer. And you know what? Maybe in order to win the Olympia, you need to be this, you know, a little bit of an asshole. And that's just not Cedric. And maybe that's really what Lee Haney meant when he said he doesn't have the eye of the tiger. Maybe he wasn't able to articulate it.
Do you think Jay was an asshole? Because I don't. And Jay won an Olympia.
Jay's cutthroat. Jay's cutthroat.
Jay's not cutthroat.
Absolutely. Chris, is Jay cutthroat?
No, I don't think Jay's cutthroat at all. I think that Jay knows right from wrong, lines up his ducks, separates the good from the bad,
right,
and you know, does what he has to do. I mean, he's determined and focused, but I don't think we heard anything negative out of Jay's mouth in 20 years.
Right, but
that's why people love Jay. That's why people love Cedric.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about negative.
I'm not saying they don't like Phil. I'm not saying they don't love Lee Haney. They don't love Phil Heath. They don't love Dorian. They don't love other people too. But I wanted to draw that distinction.
Jay,
after all this shit.
Yeah, Jay is all business, though, Chris. You know that.
Nothing wrong
That's
with
why
that.
he wins.
I know 100%.
He's all business. Cedric is too easily distracted. Jay didn't distract himself. Jay didn't have a family. Jay focused on bodybuilding and being the best bodybuilder. That's cutthroat. That's what Lee Haney would call eye of the tiger. And you know what? Maybe that's what it takes.
You're apologizing for Lee Haney right now.
I'm
not going to let Lee Haney off the hook. You're paraphrasing. You're taking what he said and you're making like ice cream out of it. You know,
that's what I do.
He said what he said. He said what he said, and now everyone's trying to backtrack and said, "Well, MD wrote it down wrong. Well, MD wrote it wrong. Well, Ron Harris got it wrong." Yeah, well, you know, that's a possibility, but we don't know that. What we do know is the quote. There were quotes behind. You know, there was quotes behind those sentences, which generally means you are writing verbatim of what the person said. And when it's, you know, there's no reason to apologize on Lee Haney's behalf. That's what he said.
Can I touch on one thing? I think what Lee said, the reason I don't think it was taken out of context is because a lot of people say that about Cedric, but I think there's a reason why. I think Cedric is more grounded than a lot of us. Like when I'm living my life, I'm living it. I'm a bodybuilder. I'm playing the part. I'm posting my stuff on Instagram. I'm training my ass off. I'm posting that on Instagram. Cedric doesn't do any of that. Cedric's posting like I drew a gorilla today, or I cut the grass today, or whatever the hell you see on Instagram. So I think people get this idea that he's not working, but just because Cedric doesn't like to play that part. Cedric doesn't like to show himself pulling a sled or, training at 4 a.m. or all that shit. So people get this idea that it just happened like overnight and he's not working hard. But I think it's because he's not showing you what he's doing. He's showing all the other stuff. So
understood, Fouad, but again, we're talking about a man who just won the Arnold Classic. I mean, again, and what's being questioned in a sense is, does he have that drive, that killer edge?
Yeah, but did you hear what you just said, though? The guy won the Arnold Classic, and people are still questioning it.
Right.
It's like Flex Wheeler, can he win? Like Flex Wheeler took second at the Olympia, and people are like, "Oh, Flex Wheeler's lazy." Does that even make sense? Does that statement even make sense? You know what I mean? So it's now people are doing it to.
Well, Fouad, you know what the problem is? People will do this. People can take watch this. Cedric, flex. Beautiful physiques, flow. Can't win the Olympia, must be lazy. Yeah. Branch Warren, box like an H shape. Wins Arnold Classics. People scratch their head and say, wow, how can he win the Arnold Classic? People go, blue collar work ethic, man. Must outwork everyone on earth.
Yeah, but if you also think, you're right about what you're saying, I agree with you, but I also look at Branch Warren and then think, look at the videos he's put out. So, he's showing you what he's done. Cedric's never done that.
Good, yeah, that's a good point.
So,
that's a good point.
People automatically go, Branch Warren's the hardest working guy on earth. And he very well might be. I've seen him train in real life, and I'm like, holy shit, I couldn't laugh through that onslaught. But at the same time, if you're seeing it all the time, then you automatically associate that blue collar with Branch. But Cedric built like a fort for his kid in his backyard that looked like most people's houses, and at the same time won the Arnold Classic. So, you know what I mean? That's also a blue collar work ethic. The guy's building stuff, he's gardening, and he still won the Arnold Classic. I'm just sitting here trying to eat my meals, and I took 6th. I mean, people need to fucking wrap their head around shit. This isn't easy. You know what I mean? It just seems like a ridiculous statement to say, "Oh, he just woke up and rolled out of bed and he won the Arnold Classic."
Well, it goes Fouad back to the point that every wrap up we do, Dave, I'm critical of people's physiques. I'm critical of the way they look versus last show, because if you're not critical, what purpose do you actually serve? As somebody reviewing a show. So you got to be critical, even when somebody's, really, really good. They can always be better. But one thing I don't criticize is say, well, the only reason Phil won it because of his genetics.
Yeah.
That's bullshit. That is a total assumption and total arrogance on my part to discount his wins down to, he had a good mother and father. They lined it up perfectly, that night. So that, 30 years later, Phil could win 10 straight.
Yeah.
So on that note, that's going to do it for this one-topic episode of Iron Debate. Special thanks to Fouad Abiad, Louis Uridel, Chris Aceto, Dave Palumbo, and, of course, our producer, Johnny Stiles. So again, it appears as if we're going to be doing an episode of Versus between Lee Haney and Cedric McMillan. That'll be coming up in the next few days, so keep it locked to RxMuscle.com.